Welcome back to Teaching Orchestra. In this episode, I'm going to be discussing a key concept that's at the cornerstone of Dorian Variations by Mark Williams, and that's tone production, particularly on the G string. If you've watched this channel, you've probably heard this speech before, but if you're new, I've identified a gap in the string pedagogy when it comes to tone production, and my disagreement with the method books is, in a nutshell, I think the method books focus too much on the D and A strings for beginners, and they leave out the stuff on the G and C strings, or the A and E strings for basses. I think that students can build up habits that they wouldn't get away with if they had to play on all four strings. All the more reason to program Dorian Variations for your orchestra because it will give them several opportunities to learn how to make rich tone on the G string. The violas start this piece on the G string. The second violins come in on the G string, the cellos come in on the G string, the basses come in on their A string. If your students can make rich tone on the G string, this is going to be a really nice piece. It's going to sound really great. So how do they generate good tone? Well, they're going to have to be able to articulate. They're going to have to be able to activate the string. And a lot of students are missing this skill because they haven't really played enough on the lower strings. The upper strings are a lot thinner and lighter. I mean, take a look at an E string on a violin and compare it to the E string on a bass. And if you're in the Suzuki school, and this isn't a criticism on the Suzuki school, I think the Suzuki school has done a really good job of producing great string players, and it's probably the biggest impact on public schools, especially here in Texas, than any other phenomenon in string pedagogy. Suzuki is to string orchestra what Glee is to show choir, pretty much. But back to my point, a kid can play Twinkle Star with every bowing and every rhythmic variation they can think of from now until our sun goes supernova without ever even having to put rosin on their bow. On the G string, they won't get the same result. So that's step one. Before you do anything else, give your students 60 seconds to rosin their bows before you rehearse Dorian Variations. The first few rehearsals, they might not have rosin or know where their rosin is, but hopefully they know what rosin is. And if you give them only 30 seconds, and they might miss out on it a few times because they don't know where it is or whatever, they might have forgotten it that day. That's okay because they'll learn and they'll be able to do it the next time. But whatever you do, don't ask your students if they rosin today. It's a waste of time. It's like asking my 4-year-old if she brushed her teeth. The answer's no, and she'll lie about it, and so will your students. Did you rosin your bow? No, they didn't. So just give them 60 seconds before you start it. Just say, hey, we're about to do Dorian Variations. Get out some rosin your bow. You got 60 seconds, ready, go. And how much does rosin cost these days? You can get a 4-pack on Amazon for $4. Amazon, by the way, not a sponsor. If you want a little bit better rosin, you can get a 2-pack for $7, and it comes with a tin and a skirt. I like the skirt, but a cleaning cloth will work. If you want the brick, that's fine, but their brick on that deal comes with the box that closes on the way. Your standard brick, it just has this kind of like sliding thing, and that's not good because rosin dries out, and this is not going to seal the moisture in. And who knows how long this rosin has been on the shelf before they sold it to you. It could have been in a warehouse for a decade. And that's why this is a better deal, because the rosin's still got some moisture, it's still got some life in it. Otherwise, you're probably just putting dust on your bow. And it's probably better than nothing, and golly, you're probably thinking, we're 4 minutes into this video, and all I've talked about so far is rosin. Yes, I'm obsessed with rosin, and I could do an entire episode, maybe even a series on rosin, but it would get less views than my Star Dancer episode. So the reason why I'm obsessed with rosin is because it's important and it's often overlooked. And I go out and judge a fair amount, and I'd say that 90% of middle school orchestras that I hear don't have enough rosin on their bows. So yeah, step 1, rosin your bow. Step 2, we need to be able to put some weight down on the string. Now that you've got rosin, when you put down the weight on your string, you can actually keep a bowing lane if you've got weight plus rosin. We always tell our students straight bows, but that's not really what we want, right? What do we want? We want them to stay in the same bowing lane. If they start a dotted half note like they do here in the Andante, if they start this about an inch above their bridge, and they bow and they get to the frog, and then they're an inch above the fingerboard. That's not what we want. That's not a straight bow. This is going to sound terrible. You can't make tone doing this, and especially not on the G string. So if you use my teaching companion, which is available on teachingorchestra.com, you'll probably start with the finger patterns first. And it's got the major pattern, the minor pattern, but you probably want to do another major pattern on the G string too. Then you can move on to these dotted half notes and see if they can keep a bowing lane while playing dotted half notes. Now, if they put down weight and they have rosin on their bow, it's going to be a lot easier. And if you don't believe me, go soap a bow, and not a newly rehaired bow, an old glacier bow from the 80s that's been sitting in a drawer somewhere. And even though there's been 17 orchestra teachers before you at your school, somehow one has survived over the years, and it's in that drawer. Go get it, soap it up, and try to keep a straight bow and see what happens. It's a lot harder than you think. It's really hard. So think about that the next time your students come play and they don't have rosin on their bows. All right, so the next thing that we need to do when we're playing notes on the G string is to make sure that your students are pushing down on the strings with the left hand. If they're not getting enough finger pressure, they're not going to have good tone. So how much pressure do they need? They should be able to tap the string with any finger and hear the pitch. That's about how much. So later on here in the teaching companion, we do all these finger building exercises, and these are really great for building up fourth fingers, but they're also good for finger pressure too. If you can do these with your fourth finger and you can hear the A, that means you're using enough. If not, we got to get some more pressure with the left hand. Try it without the bow. If they can hear the notes, then they've got the technique that they need, all right? If they can't, we got to get more pressure with the left hand. And on my Thursday's video, I'm going to go over how to do that a little bit better. But lastly, I want to leave you with this for this video. Don't do these teaching companions linearly. Pick an exercise and isolate it. Get good at it. Take a rhythm exercise and practice it and get really good. Make sure they've got good tone, try it on different strings, and maybe take it to these finger patterns, and instead of doing the whole note, try to do the rhythms all up and down the finger pattern. You can have them do these rhythms doing Twinkle Star if you want. I don't care. See how I tied it back to my thesis? My English teacher would be proud. In my next video, I'm going to be going over bowing styles, and I hope to see you then.